Hello to everybody who's joining us today for this event. I am just going to get started shortly. We are waiting for people just to come in from the waiting room, and then we will get started shortly. So give us a few more minutes and we will be on our way.
Hi, Melissa. How you doing? Can you hear me? Okie dokie.
Hi, George. Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, good. Good. Glad to hear it.
Alyssa is muted, but she will, yeah.
Okay. Perfect. So we are going to get started here. It looks like everybody's coming from the waiting room. So I will just do a brief introduction. I would like to say welcome to everybody who's joining today's online event, Innovation Financing and Art and Science. It's part of the Silicon Valley Innovation and Entrepreneurship events through the Meetup group. It is a pleasure having you all here today. And just a quick introduction, my name is Elisa King. I am the Marketing and Communications Manager at the World Innovations Forum. And firstly, just a couple of housekeeping. There's no need to take screenshots today, as we will share the recording of the video with everybody following this, and it will probably be on the website, and we will give that to you in a link on the Meetup. Secondly, if you have any questions throughout the webinar, please post them in the Zoom question panel box, and we will address them at the end of each section so that you can get everything answered. If we can't answer it during that session, we will hopefully have some time at the end to go through them. Otherwise, we will definitely follow up with you. If you have any technical difficulties, again, please feel free to chat me or chat one of our panelists, or have a question and put it in the box, and we will try and address those as well. So with that, I will hand it over to our moderator today, George Paris. He is the VP of Sales at WIForum, and he will guide you through the event today. George, it's all up to you.
Thank you, Alyssa. Thank you for the wonderful introduction. Good morning, fellow innovators and entrepreneurs. Well, welcome to our online meetup of the San Francisco Silicon Valley Innovation and Entrepreneurship Group. And today's topic, innovation financing. How to avoid the pitfalls of funding your innovation project, will be handled by one of the world's best innovators and our first presenter today, Axel Schultz. Axel will be followed by founder and president of Silicon Valley company, BizFuels, Juliet Donahue. And then accredited angel investor, John Reigard, will follow Juliet to talk about membership opportunities with Swiss NGO World Innovations Forum, your host for today's online meeting. Our first presenter, Axel Schultz, is chairman of the World Innovations Forum and CEO of Blue Calum. Axel started and successfully exited 4 companies, the biggest reaching $5 billion in revenue, the second close to $1 billion. Now, Axel is a published author and patent holder. In 2015, he was listed in the global 100 most influential startup accelerators. He's won the San Francisco Entrepreneur Award, chaired the SaaS Channel Committee at the SIIA in the US, and was an early advisor in 2003 at LinkedIn. Now, for the past years, Axel has been on a quest to find out how the the brain is creating and processing ideas, and how some of those ideas could become disruptive to an entire industry segment. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Axel Schultz.
All right. Thank you so much, George. And hello also from my side. Now, let me see if I can hit the right button here to share the presentation. I think that works. Yeah, what we want to do today, and those of you who have been with us for a long time, I mean, I think we started the Meetup group in 2014 or something like that. So a lot has happened, and we're focusing more and more on innovation because the world is focusing on innovation. And with building groundbreaking innovation, sort of there's also, I don't want to say a paradigm shift, but there is certainly a shift on the innovation, investment, and financing side. Startups who are innovative have it so far easier to get actually funding than others. And those who are innovative have a pretty nice portfolio of investors. Now, at the same time, you know, this world is not only built from startups, but it's actually having a lot of mid-market companies and enterprises. And some of the enterprises have been startups 20 years ago. And as you probably noticed, that some of the even older companies are built basically their entire business on technology that they invented maybe 30, 50, or even 100 years ago, and are nearing a troublesome period where they get disrupted by young startups. So one way to think about that is, okay, that's way of life, but I actually don't think so. I mean, we have life cycles of life and death, but these companies are not just companies, they're humans, and the humans don't die, but they have trouble keeping their job. And so I think we're all pretty good if we're helping each other to innovate, and that's part of our business. And financing is the other part. Now, first of all, you know, the group is growing, and this is the team of the World Innovations Forum with supporters from all over the world, of all colors and different religions and everything. And that makes the organization a pretty cool one, because there's inputs from so many areas of the world and so many cultures that help us get new ideas in a constant base. And so these guys up here are just basically standing behind and for the grand vision of, you know, a global space for innovative minds. The question we have been asking ourselves is, when we have been asked from others, you know, why are CEOs and investors so focused on innovation? I mean, is this really everything? Can be a good job with no innovative, but just an improved product be a great thing? And the answer is obviously yes. So there's no question that if you have a non-innovative but good product, that you can be in business, and you should be in business, and you should run it. The thing is that investors, however, they're looking for groundbreaking innovation. I mean, serious innovation, meaning changing the way people do their things. And there is a reason for. When we look into what we call the innovation tree, you know, in the past, I mean, it took long, actually about 300,000 years to get to a plow, and then to wagons and houses and steam engine and skyscrapers and then medicine and fridge and TV and internet and everything we have. Now, the biggest money was made here, of course. And this is why investors look into innovation, not so much into improvement or in the basically building of new products. And this is not just investors into startups. This is investors who do private equity investment into mid-market companies, and the public investors who invest into the public companies. And you might have probably realized just in the last couple of months, so that the Mercedes under the automobiles, Mercedes itself, is today basically 10% of the value of Tesla. And the question is, why is this? Is this just a hype, or is this just craziness? Well, it might look like that. But when Microsoft got their valuation, it seemed to be totally overhyped. But Microsoft is the dominant software player in the world. When Google, after already there were other search engines, became this overly hyped mega valuation, today it's basically controlling the data of the world. And if you look at Facebook with over 2 billion customers or users, I mean, users meaning they use the product every day, despite the fact that there might be a couple 100,000 who go, but that's not even noticeable in this big number, are basically the one who's a place to be where everybody wants to be or should be. And so with that picture of today, we wonder, so how will this possibly evolve? So what comes out? So we see that one innovation sparks another, sparks another, sparks another. And we're at a point where we already realize that we have an exponential growth of innovation. I mean, every 3 minutes, a new patent is filed. Within these 3 minutes, there's hundreds of patents that are not filed, but actually still products get to market. In the next 10 years, this innovation tree probably looks like that. And this is so huge. And to find these guys gets ever easier that investors look for innovative companies and they don't care so much about others. And whether this is fair, whether this is right, whether this is wrong, actually really doesn't matter. It's a fact of life that certain people choose to invest in innovative companies, and pretty much nobody invests in non-innovative companies, with the understanding that you guys will figure out a way anyway. So when we talk about innovation, we also want to make clear we're talking about groundbreaking innovation, which means the introduction of a change that is successful, not just locally, but across the planet. And people will conduct their business and their lives differently than before, based on that innovation. The electric car is an innovation. Airplane is an innovation. I mean, all these things that made a significant change. The internet is an innovation. And within the internet, all the various applications that make a difference is an innovation. We had CRM before, a company called Siebel. Siebel doesn't exist today, but that was by far the #1 CRM system in the world. Today it's Salesforce.com, because the innovation was using the internet, restructuring the whole concept of a CRM, the way to interact with customer data through a browser, basically. People said this will never happen. Well, today is the only way it happens, or almost the only way. And so people look for groundbreaking innovation. And now the question is innovation financing. So how does this actually work? And why we talked about, but how and where do we get investors? And since we have today more than just startups, I don't want to say just startups, more than startups and mid-market company and big companies, it's a mixture of all the types of companies. We have actually two paths of financing. One is the CFO or the CEO in a bigger company, and the other is the VC in a fast-growing startup that exceeded their seed rounds and is now growing like crazy. On the venture capital side, we have strategic investment. There's long-term return. So VC invests in you as a startup or a fast-growing startup or a fast-growing company with the understanding that hopefully you will go to an IPO in the next 7 to 10 or 12 years. And the return to this venture capital firm is more than 100x. I mean, they're ghosting around numbers like 10x would be cool. Absolutely not. If a VC would do 10x over that time stretch, they would lose money. They would not exist anymore. So we're talking 100, and we're talking even more. And if you look at Sequoia, for instance, who just also helped funding a German company, they basically, it wasn't even an A round, but it was considered an A round. It was the first round of funding, 100 million for their startup. And this money is invested by the understanding that this is a multi-billion-dollar company in the future. And I guess you can understand that if you have a little cool app, that these people just, the management alone of investing in you with a little cool app is the same amount of time that they would spend into one of these bigger potentials. They're both ideas with some sort of valuation from the market and some sort of early customers and so forth, but the one has a huge potential and the other not. Now, venture capitalists have built their entire investment strategy around the concept of growth over a long period of time, and then owning, so to speak, a market, or not necessarily even dominating it or so, but having a large chunk that the return of this investment and the risk associated with this investment will actually be covered. Now, if you look into mid-market companies, and if you're one of the Innovation Center members of an enterprise, you will wonder, why can't my company, which may be already a multi-billion or even $100 billion company, not be able to fund, great ideas like tiny little startups? Well, the reason is here. A CFO has a very different task and is wired and structured differently. His business or her business is strategic cash profit optimization and expense management, which means the whole wiring, the whole concept of thinking is, okay, how is the cash going? Is the profit there? Can I optimize it, reduce the expenses, and we're all good to go? I don't care what is in 10 years. I make here the next year. So 2 years, would be okay, but that's pretty much it. So there are two different ways of thinking and financing, and that makes the biggest difference in innovation financing in a corporate versus a startup. So whoever's from a corporate now might realize saying, well, we would be much better off with a VC. And the answer is clearly yes. But the difficulty is that the corporate is owned by investors, and the VCs are not investing in the corporate, but the corporate is financing your internal startup, so to speak. So one way to solve this is actually having a very clear and very open conversation with a CFO and not one person below him or her. And if they are not available, then you know that your job as an innovator in a corporate environment is actually at risk. And that is, if I tell this to you as a corporate innovator, you might be frustrated, and the corporation might be frustrated, saying, what is this guy telling? I mean, come on, we'll get it done. But the rationale is, in the last 50 years, there's not a single enterprise that actually brought forward a groundbreaking innovation. And if you look at the best of the best in Silicon Valley, you will have a hard time to find one. And that means there is a fundamental rethinking necessary, even for the Intels, the Ciscos, all the wonderful companies, the Oracles in this world. I mean, Oracle does very well, doesn't it? What's the Oracle business? We all know it's the database. If you look into their annual report, this is where the money comes from. How old is this database? Isn't it amazing? It is so old we don't even almost remember. It's probably 42 or something years old. And so there is no innovation on the database level other than buying once MySQL as a kind of a nice add-on, but there's no innovation. And so corporates, no matter where they are in the world, including even Silicon Valley, have to rethink innovation. And here on this slide, you see sort of a little bit why. So then there's the question of innovators. Why is my amazing idea not adequately valued? I mean, the idea I have is changing everything. And I've seen these presentations and I can fully relate to it. But the answer is the initial value of an idea is exactly zero. So we on the innovation side, innovators, innovation teams, we have to rationalize that the idea of an innovation is actually zero. Unless the idea is actually creating revenue and profits for whoever has it, there is no value in it. You may say there's an intellectual value. Well, yeah, then, go to a bakery and say, okay, I'd like some bread for my intellectual value. And if the baker would not buy your amazing idea, even if it's patented already, and exchanges this with a piece of bread, and you will see a situation not even worth a piece of bread. So there is no value. But if this idea has already created sort of a product and there are customers, and even if it's small, then this is where value creation begins. And for an investor, the value of an idea is basically growing with its distribution. And it's not the distribution of the idea, but actually the distribution of the outcome of this idea. So if you're building a product and it's just available in your village, the value is still extremely small. If it's available all over the country, that's a different story. So this is a certain value for you. It's a certain value for the customers. It's a certain value for some of the cities that basically participate in the value creation of yours. But even there, interestingly enough, there's zero value for the country. The country's value starts when you export the product. And so I know some of you are actually from outside the valley or outside even the country. So export is where the value actually creates. There is a wonderful list on Wikipedia. It's the export per capita list. And it reads like the same list of the wealthiest, richest countries in the world. And you look that side by side, do the exercise, and you will realize that those countries who have a huge export per capita are super wealthy. And it declines immediately when the export goes down. And I mean, where many countries, go up and down. Look at the US, went up, went down, like everybody else. We have all these waves. But we also can see the correlation. If the export goes down because of restrictions and whatever we have, okay, the wealth goes down. It goes up, it goes up. And so your product, no matter how small it might be, is part of this economic world. And so even more so important to understand why investors invest or don't invest. So another question I got often is, what do you, excuse me, what do you need to get funding? And also here, the list you see here, you may not necessarily like because you think it's the product and you want to demo the product and you be excited about the product. And this is really good. I mean, you should be proud of it. But an investor invests in a business. The investor is almost never, without, well, there's some exceptions, but almost never an expert in what you're doing. So they need to have different mechanisms to understand whether your business is actually good or not for them. And when it's good for them, meaning there is a return on investment because there is a growing market and you do much more of the same and therefore you're profitable, then they get their appetite. And if they don't see that potential, they would not invest. If I would tell you how I operate on an open heart something, I mean, I can't, by the way, I'm not a doctor, but if I would tell you this, you would say, okay, I mean, yeah, maybe not, I have no clue. And every single investor you talk to is most likely the same, unless it would be an engineer in your industry. And the likelihood that this engineer in your industry is also an investor is 0.something%. So that means that you need to be prepared, and whether this is a VC on the startup side or a CFO in a corporate, you need to be prepared to tell somebody that has no clue about your idea and what you do and how it goes, that this is of great value potential in the future. And the best way to do this is to go in the numbers game and into the business aspects. Forget the product, forget anything. I've seen so many disappointed faces when they came to me and said, Axel, I have this great idea, one of the startup events. I have it on my tablet. Can I show you real quick, just a minute? And when I say, so, I'm really not interested in the product. I might be interested in investing in what you do, but tell me who you are and what's your team like and what's your business aspects and what is your dream in your company? Where does it go? Your product, and rightfully, may change in 2 years. It may be entirely different in 5 years from now. And since in 10 years I get my return, I'm not interested in what you have today. And people can't believe it and so forth. So real quick through this list: uniqueness, patents, methods, processes, a little bit of technology, so at least something. Is your company registered, or do you have contracts? Even if you're in a corporate, do you have top employees attracted to your innovation center? Is the leadership, the financials, the scalability of the product and of the operations, processes, services, team, again, pricing, forecast, marketing, partners, success stories, mentions, feedback, and so forth. So you might say, but they don't even are interested in the product because that is what we are selling. And it's very hard for many people that the answer is absolutely no. Now, many investors are at least polite enough to listen to you and let you tell, what the product is and, emulate excitement, but they cannot be excited. I mean, it would be unfair to actually even expect that excitement. They're excited when you have a stellar team. You know what the market is. You have already customers. You have people telling that this is the greatest thing in the world you did. You have a marketing campaign that all of a sudden a lot of people are already talking about. That is something an investor would realize and recognize. And so why not bother them with blah, blah, blah about a product that looks different in 5 years and not talk to him about your business? So the other question is, what does it take to be investment ready? So now I understand that, my pitches need to be really different, and we cater to the investor in a different way than to a customer. And an investor is also a different person because an investor is by default a partner in your company for the next 5 to 10 years. So you will be with them, all the rest of your business life, and they with you. So be careful with, what you let into your company. It's not just getting the money or not, it's actually getting a partner or not. So get ready for a bigger round is probably the purpose of getting there. And then from the innovator point of view, so innovators like you as a startup or as a fast growing company, or also as somebody within a corporation, you need to be in a position to select your investor. If you're sort of the beggar, please invest in me, you're lost right there. And unfortunately, this is not really, public knowledge. It looks like, because I see these people who are just hoping to get money from whoever, and none of them ever succeeded, because if the investor is not a match to your business, you guess what happens? They drop out. As a may come in, but they ask, so why are you dropping out? I think this is never going to fly. Oh, really? Okay. So why do you think so? They couldn't tell me. I mean, it's a mess back and forth, and I finally gave up. You ruin your company right there. And you may say, well, if we get money now, then we can prove we are good and blah, 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 blah. But that's, again, not the way the business runs. The business runs on partnerships, and investor is a partner in you. Be due diligence ready. And so what I actually learned from a CFO I had back in the year, so we were just starting a new company in San Mateo, and I had somebody helping me finding a CFO, and so he said, we should actually have the due diligence ready before we even talk to the first person, let alone getting into due diligence mode. And I said, well, why should we? I mean, really? It is just a lot of work. That my experience was, We did, of course. I mean, it was a good suggestion. And my experience was in the first meeting, I was entirely, and this was already my second company, I was entirely different just from the sort of well-being, so to speak, because I knew exactly everything. I knew the questions they might ask. I have an answer for pretty much anything. I could look at our due diligence material, and that was impressive for the investors. They realized, okay, we are ready for an investment. Rather, okay, then let's see what the papers are actually showing. I had it with me in the presentation. And there are a couple things about the due diligence, and this is not only for VCs or angels, this is also for the CFO. The CFO in your enterprise will also ask you similar questions like an investor is, do you have your act together? Do you have this? Do you have that? How is it here? How is it there? The team you have, will they stay? The product you have, how many tests did you run? Do you have already invoiced products? Whether you're within or outside the company, doesn't matter. Do you have a return process? Do you have a support process? Do you have anybody in place? And if you're an internal innovator and say, no, we don't have all these things. We're not supposed to, we're not asked to. This will come later when the product is in the market. Well, there is no later end product in the market when you don't have these services already thought through and available. And you may say, well, this is not what I was tasked to. If you get, as an innovator, into a business, no matter whether it's a startup or a large company, you may not be asked to do certain things in a corporate, but you know, or will know, or hopefully not will learn that when you don't, game is over. And so innovators need to be stars, and stars are viewable with a naked eye, in light years distance. Star meaning, you need to be success oriented, and you need to have successes when you're getting money. I remember I was about 19. I started my first startup, went to my bank. I mean, this was eons ago, obviously. And they told me what kind of securities and how much I need actually on my bank account to get a loan. Come on, guys. I mean, I wouldn't come here if I need already more on the bank account than my loan is, because then I wouldn't need your money and so forth. I did not realize that they knew if I'm successful, I will come back and come back and come back. And if there's no balance between them and me, then why take the risk? So successes has to be there. You won't get money without successes. And if you say, well, if I'm successful, then I don't need the money anymore. Congratulations, then keep going. But it wouldn't work the other way around. Team. Probably every investor would tell you the three things you need. Team, stellar team, the best team in the world. It's all about team. Ambition. I mean, if you're not ambitious, who else would be? And why would anybody believe in this? And then there's one thing that I realized over the years working with startups that become more and more important is research, particularly in emerging countries, but also even in Silicon Valley. We got teams coming up with great ideas, but simply the first question, like, is this new? Did you find anybody who actually did something like that? I was, we haven't really looked yet, but I believe no. What a downer. So if you want to be a star, then you look for these four elements, because everything else indirectly or directly come in place when you look for that. And on the investor side, I have to say, and I believe there are some investors here in the call too, there is something that I learned actually from investors for investors: know what you want. If you're just investing to invest, that would be a really bad idea, because the likelihood that you're failing, not necessarily failing that you lose everything, but you're not successful because you didn't even know what you look for, and then you get something, and this might be disappointing because you didn't know what you're looking for in the first place. And if you're looking for, as an investor or as a CFO, for a long-term investment like a VC, then look for, you know what you need to look for. particularly as an angel. You don't have the, the full span of a VC yet. Make sure that you look for something that you understand, that you can accompany, that you can help even with, versus just some random startup which just looks good. But more importantly, also for the CFO. And if we have a CFO here, then can relate. And if not, then help your CFO ask the question what they're looking for. And if they're just tasked to spend some money and have some budget for startups, then you know that this will not work. There is no startup in the world that has gone public or any way successful with less than 50 million or 100 million revenue. Recently, it's probably more like 200 million, in revenue, in investment. Which means if a startup needs 200 million or 100 million to get the company off the ground into a market, highly, competitive world market, why should a sort of more conservative enterprise be better than that? The CFO need to know that there is no innovative idea that they can get to market with less than 100 million, period. I learned this was 20 years ago that the BMW 7 Series in, I think it was the version of 2000 or so, cost the company BMW 7 billion to develop. That wasn't a groundbreaking innovative car. It was just the next generation. 7 billion total development cost. Now, if you were asked to be a groundbreaking innovator within a corporate and people hope that you can do this for 50,000 or 200,000 or even for 5 million, that is ridiculous. Now we know that it is, but usually people don't know. They just think, didn't this startup, I remember they got 50,000 and now they're running a competitive product and we're struggling to actually compete with them. Why can't we do this? We always have 50,000. Yeah, we have 50,000, but we may not have the 50 million or 250 million that VCs pumped into the company to get to the point where they're actually competing successfully against an enterprise. And the other thing, that's an old investor rule, of course, get familiar with the capital needs. And that's what I just said. Most of the unicorns ate up close to $1 billion, and those who have today a valuation of 10 and more billion easily ate up already $1 billion in investment. Now that means that as CFO, your enterprise will probably be ready to finance something like that in that order. And you may say, never ever. There's just no way that we can carve out $1 billion just for some, crazy innovation. Well, you don't have to do this in 1 year. We're talking about 5 to 10 years time span. And if that is too long because you need the innovation right now, well, then you need to buy a company. There is no innovation on earth ever been before that come out of the gate and boom, here's $1 billion company. Tesla is a 10-year-old company, imagine. And you probably know that 3D printers invented in 1983. There is nothing like, okay, it came just out of the box. Facebook started in 2004, I believe, and Google even before 2000. So we have to get this rational about the investment and the investor to actually have a meaningful conversation. And how to get to international investors. And this is the question because lots of Silicon Valley companies are actually international, live there, may not get an investment, need to go back, or even want to stay and get investors. And that is what we're starting to think about a year ago. And what we're having today is what we call the Innovation Capital Network, the ICN. We have about 900 angel investors, VCs, and private equity investors with a combined investment power of about $1 billion. So this looks powerful and very interesting, but I can tell you also here, there's none of these investors who would invest in just a startup. if it's not an innovative product and solution, ideally with an innovative business model that has the power and the ambition and sort of the convincing that this company can go global and go to an IPO. So IPO is still sort of the milestone where we have to get to. We're helping teams from emerging nations to start their headquarters in Singapore, because in most countries they would never get funded, and even international investors would not fund them. Obviously, if you're registered in Silicon Valley, that's a different story. So you wouldn't need to move your headquarters, but most of the companies would need to. And we help in innovation centers to actually also get the necessary funds for their CFOs or from their CFOs, because sometimes CFOs see a potential, also the CEOs, and they realize that we would not want to invest, $500 million in something, but there might be investors around the world to pull this off. So there's always an idea of a joint venture, any kind of structures. I mean, there are thousands of variations around the planet. And so I want to close with this old phrase, reach for the stars. I mean, literally, the stars are actually or the sky is no longer the limit. We can go beyond, physical boundaries today. And we find once a year a way to overcome a known as physical boundary just a couple of years ago and find new ways to actually drill down. We never believed that we get below the atom size. And, today we know, there's a whole world or a whole universe below the atom size. So the two things I just want to give with you or share with you: be courageous and be a risk taker. And this doesn't matter whether you're a startup or within a corporation. Be a risk taker and be courageous with your ambitions. And that's the way to get funded. Thank you very much. And give it back to George. And maybe there might be some questions. I think depending on how the way we run the show, so to speak, we can probably do also questions at the very end.
Okay, excellent. Excellent presentation. Thank you so much. One of the questions that, always, and I get a lot of this too, is certainly questions from early stage startups, even startups that have received a seed round of funding that are looking for Series A, B, and C, is how important do you feel it is for the entrepreneur, the startup founder, to learn how to speak the language of investors?
That's a very good question. Excellent. I didn't really touch this at all, but I would like to answer is, how would you want to do business with somebody in northern China that speaks a Chinese dialect and no word of English, and you speak no word of Chinese and only English? The likelihood of making a deal is extremely small. And if you want to speak with an investor, you don't need to know all the investor lingo and all those terms, but you obviously need to understand what they're looking for. And if you want something from them, then you need to know what that is. And trust me, they want something from you, because you as an entrepreneur, you're representing a value to them. They cannot increase the value of their money by order of magnitude, other than on the stock exchange, which is more marginable. They cannot do this without you. So they want to invest in you, and they need to understand how you think as well. But you need to do this from both sides. Yeah.
Yep. We've had a couple of questions about how can folks get a recording of this? And I just wanted to reiterate, this is being recorded and it will appear at 3 different places. It will appear on the bluecallum.com website. the worldinnovationsforum.org website, and the Meetup page. It'll probably be up there within 48 hours. So just don't worry about it. If you don't see it within 48 hours, all you need to do is get a hold of me, send me an email, and I will make sure you get a copy of it. Don't worry. But Axel, this was terrific. And I really, really appreciate your insights and what you brought to the table. I just can't say enough about the fact that anybody that started 4 companies and exited 4 companies does have a pretty good handle on this whole finance funding scene. And you've certainly gone through it. And when people start to learn more about you, they're going to learn how you went through this during good times as well as difficult business times also. So, you've walked the walk and talked the talk, and I want to thank you for today's presentation. I really do.
Absolutely. Thanks, George, for having me. Pleasure as always. Thanks.
Oh, excellent. Excellent. Now, one last thing before Axel takes a small break. Anybody that asks questions, we will get back to you. If you don't hear your question being asked today, just send us your email address and we'll be more than happy to engage with you either tomorrow or the day after tomorrow or sometime next week, whatever is convenient for you. We don't want you to walk away from the presentation, the World Innovations Forum presentation, without getting these things answered that you feel are important to your development and your growth. So Axel, once again, thank you so much. Now, our next presenter, Juliet Donahue, is a Silicon Valley native with 3 decades of growing and expanding companies in the US and abroad. Multilingual, she spent over a decade working in Europe, Asia, the Middle East. She's got boots on the ground experience launching businesses in 18 countries, coached businesses in 30 countries. She's got deep, deep experience in funding growth, including 3 IPOs, 22 M&As, 3 JVs, 2 spinoffs, and franchise development. Now, today, she is the founder and head growth strategist at a company called BizFuels. And BizFuels is a conscious business accelerator and coaching firm. Now, she's dedicated to elevating humanity through conscious businesses and projects. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Juliet Donahue.
Okay.
Go ahead, Juliet, take it away.
I can't share I need Axel to let go of his screen.
Oh, okay. Okay, well that should happen soon.
There we go.
There we go.
Just a moment. All right. Hello, everybody. So first of all, I want to thank George and the World Innovations Forum for having me here today. As somebody who's worked on innovation for a long time, what I wanted to bring to the table with this innovation financing is some solid, hardcore evidence and ideas and concepts that have come out through reports, through TechCrunch, reports through Enterprise Tech, reports through Crunchbase, and all different ideas of what has changed since we went into lockdown. So these are some changes and things that have occurred in the last 9 months. They're things that you can feel as a consumer, that venture capitalists and people who are doing investment feel as people who are in the economy and also who are investing in the future of the economy. And I'm going to address 3 main areas. We're going to look at product and service changes and how that's what has changed in the way that people innovate in that area. We're going to look at timing, past timing coming into 2020, what's happened in 2020, things that haven't happened and that have happened that were predicted. And then we're going to move over into some new financing mechanisms that are available for startups like yourself, a different way of thinking about it and how they serve the market in a different way and how they open up for you potentially ways to be invested in and that sort of thing in innovation, okay? So the first thing I want to start with is a number really quick, and that is that early stage investments usually are invested in for approximately a time period of maybe, let's say, 7 years. Between the time you do the first seed investment and you go through the hockey stick and the exit, okay? That's what they're looking at, is about 7 years. When we're talking about innovation financing, we're looking at statistics that when they ask people about innovation financing, they're saying, I want to have a result. 34% want a result in the first 6 months. Less than 1% are looking anytime after 5 years. So the huge preponderance of it is right in the beginning and right as we step in. So that said, let's take a look in innovation and innovation financing. What are the things that the people who are investing in, that they're feeling themselves as consumers in the market space? What are the things that have changed since we went into COVID? So let's talk really quickly about products and services. During this time, on a worldwide level, people have been in their homes. The products and services that have started to come to the forefront, not in sector, but moreover by what it is that they do for the consumer, are those items that assist and help, right? Either they assist and help to ease and facilitate actions or items that are going on with separation in the market space. They bring people together. The other area of product innovation that's going on right now is contact and relationship. Us being in our own individual homes and separated from each other, contact and relationship are huge amounts of how do we do this. And the last piece of types of innovation around products and services is really infrastructure. And we can see a good example of this. I was actually talking with Axel about this a little bit earlier. One of the largest investments in all of Europe this year was for $118 million, and it went to a company based out of Berlin. And what they do is they help consolidate and improve economies of scale for the small guys who are in the Amazon market space, okay? So I wanted to touch on a little bit the 3 different areas of how product has changed. Now, the other way that we're looking at innovation in this area is we have to understand that purchase, delivery, simplification, ease of understanding what the product is, ease of purchase, ease of delivery, because the consumer has a very short attention span and has a very short fuse because everything is having to be reinvented. So that whole ease piece being part of the packaging, absolutely. The next piece is in the pricing. There is a reduction in impulse buying. There is an increase in price sensitivity. And there is a clear and distinct movement in the market space towards value, price, comparison, discussion, moving forward. So those are 3 areas that we often see. We see the product, the service, the ease of it, and the pricing. We always work on that as innovators. But the 4th area that has come forward this year, we can see in many countries. We can see it in Colombia, we can see it in Peru, we've seen it in China, we've seen it in the United States. And that is what type of social impact can or do the companies have a value, a conscious value towards the economy, the environment, or human concerns, maybe even social justice in that area. So companies that come in with a fully rounded kit of who they are, knowing who they are in the market space and what they do, all of that is part of it. So moving forward from that, we've talked about the type of innovation around products that's going on, not by sector, but by what people are anticipating the products have as qualities. Now let's take a look at timing, okay? So 2020, at the beginning of the year, when we walked into the lockdown, a lot of people said, it's going to slow down, it's going to slow down. And what we've seen instead is a frenzy. We've seen a lot more investment this year. We have, as of Q3 of this year, we have close to 373 IPOs this year, as opposed to 213 last year. That's walking into Q2 of this year. So what was anticipated didn't happen, but some of those were backlogged from previously. So as we move through this frenzy and we see them dissipate, we have some other things to pay attention to regarding timing, okay? Paying attention to runway. Things are taking longer now. It is taking longer to get the right people on the phone. It's a little different process. As processes are changing, people are learning new processes. The processes put in place in Q2 of this year and Q3 of this year by investment firms and venture capitalists, which were put in as a temporary measure, are now getting upgraded right now during Q3 and the beginning of Q4 because it's looking like it's going to be a longer term solution. right? So there are shifts and changes around how long it takes things to happen. So pay attention to your runway. Be aware that almost every article out there, TechCrunch, Enterprise Tech, they're all talking about a drop in valuations in the coming year. So be ready for that. But that doesn't mean that it's not available. It just means that the way in which they do the valuations, the mechanisms that you have available to you may value out a little bit differently than you are anticipating. The next thing is the seasonality of your business. One of the biggest challenges with a longer time period for us to go through the process is that if you land for due diligence in a seasonality quarter or just after a seasonality quarter, your numbers may not be what they need to be. So be very strategic in the time frame that you use for when you go in, especially with the changes in the length of time and investment cycle today. Let's talk a little bit about Q1, Q2. A lot of people are getting ready for next year. Every year between Q1 and Q2, we generally see about an 18% to 20% increase between Q1 and Q2 of companies coming out for looking for investment, right? But the interesting thing of that number of about 18 to 20% increase between Q1 and Q2 is we don't see an increase in number of companies getting funding. Right? So that's something for you to keep in mind as you're looking at your own timing. That said, let's take a look at two areas of the year that are in the past have been counseled against, and in 2020 had one effect, and in 2021 I think we're going to have a different effect. In the past, from July 15th to September 7th, we have seen kind of a little bit of a drop in, it's a little bit harder to get. It's not difficult, it's considered a little bit harder to get meetings and appointments and that sort of thing. This year in Europe, it kind of continued as usual because Europe had opened up by that point, or some of the countries, not all of them, but some of them had opened up as they were heading into that time frame. In North America, some businesses also had that, and it was also a dip this year. Next year, we're not sure what's going to happen. So be aware that that time frame that's maybe a little bit harder, not necessarily difficult, but harder, may actually end up not being what it was previously. So keep an eye out for it, because oftentimes in investment firms and venture capitalists will not put out as much money in the beginning of the year and save more for the end, and that time frame would become a sweeter spot. But for right now, we're not really sure where that's headed based on the pandemic. And then once again, at the end of the year, November 15th to January 7th, where it used to be a much wider time frame, I believe that that's going to be actually shortening a little bit into more of a 3 to 4 week time frame, really just a little bit before the Christmas holiday into January, because the movement of people is not what it used to be. So instead of it being a full 6 week period, it may become a shorter, 3 week period. So keep an eye on that. The other thing is there's a backlog of IPOs right now. So we will see some IPOs coming through in December, and there may be some that may fall into next year, depending on what's happening, because the market is kind of holding steady. There may be some that may fall in January in North America, at least, or the United States before, up until right before the maybe the transition of power, some trying to get everything out before anything shifts. So there's some of those things that we may see. Late stage investing. Let's talk a little bit about late stage investing, because previously late stage investing was actually, very much looking for the unicorn. We're kind of anticipating that we're going to see a lot less of that moving forward, a lot less of late stage investing and a lot more of the innovation financing with the ROI. Okay. So those are some of the things and observations that we have seen in the past and that we're going to see in the future. I want to leave you with one more last idea, and these are 3 new innovation products that have come out in 2020 that have really supported what we call the three-legged stool for innovation. In innovation, we have intellectual capital, we have human capital, and we have financing capital. And there have been 3 types of products that have come out this year, one starting in February, one in September, and one in August. All of them different ways of financing. So we've seen an increase in direct listings. That's really, the direct listings is really a question of intellectual capital. The availability in direct listings for people to go out and actually invest directly in companies. So there have been some announcements by some of the exchanges to encourage this. We're seeing it in North America as a direct listing. It is really about the intellectual capital and really getting funding out in that direction. The second place we've seen it, we can look at Y Combinator and their announcement in, I believe it was September of this year, the new fund manager, the whole idea that they're using human talent and helping train and increase human talent through new fund management. And they're actually doing it for funds within their accelerator, right? So taking a look at all the ways of developing human talent, not just the talent within the organizations that they're investing in, but talent also within the investment side community for people who work in the finance side. And then the last and final one I want to mention is actually what Angels List did. They rolled out both in February of this year, and they rolled out again this year in August. And that was the rolling funds. And the rolling funds are interesting because they're really a different financing way. It allows independent individual investors to invest with an investor in a fund type setting. But what they do is they are quarterly. So you agree to your investment and it's regular on a quarterly scale. But you are in a fund. So should the fund overall lose money, you are locked in through your quarter of your investment. So the mechanism itself is a really interesting financial product to take a look at, little different than how we do a little different way of looking at funding. So I wanted to mention those three. Those are some of the things that have changed, that are moving in innovation and capital and innovation financing. If you're interested in learning more about these types of rolling funds, there are a couple of companies out there. Open8er is one of them, and they're offering actually education for people to use these rolling products and these more widely distributed products. All right, so that's what I had for you guys today with some observations, shifts, changes, and things that are changing regarding innovation financing. Let's see. All right.
Okay. All right. Juliet, thank you so much. That was terrific. I got a question for you that was coming from, looks like Switzerland. Is recurring gross revenue or the idea more important to the angel investor?
That's a good question. So in my experience, so in the companies the thing that's important about angels that is different than institutional is they have worked hard for their money. They are usually people who went out and founded startups, did the work, but now it's their own money that they're investing. So I feel that my experience when working with angels is they are really interested in what the revenue is, what is coming in. They're not interested in as much as the potential. They want to see what you have as traction. They want to see what you're doing because once again, they went to work to go earn the money in order to invest in you, right? So the positioning I find when I talk with angels is a little bit different than I would use for a venture capitalist. It is a slightly different animal in how they think about things. Now, this new rolling fund that they have that exists that goes quarterly where you agree to investment and you're working on a rolling fund, that's a little bit different. It's somewhere in between angel investor of the old and institutional investor of the old, right? But there are about 200 institutional funds that have actually closed this year. So there's a lot of instability in the market space. Where this rolling thing is new, there's a gap because some has disappeared and some hasn't quite gotten its legs under it yet. So it's something to keep an eye on.
Thank you so much. That was terrific. And again, any questions that have not been answered during the proceedings here, we will take a look at these things, make sure if they're directed towards Juliet or Axel, believe me, you will get your answers here forthwith, okay? But listen, Juliet, that was terrific. Thank you again. I appreciate you doing this for us and everything. And I'm sure we're going to be bringing you back sometime in the very near future. Okay. All right. Take care.
All right. Thanks. Bye.
Okay. Okay. Our next speaker is angel investor and mentor, John Rygaard. Now, John enjoys working with growing businesses and helping startups that he works with. And he's here today to talk about membership and becoming part of the World Innovations Forum and how important that could be for you to be a part of the newest Swiss NGO on the face of the earth right now. So, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I give you John Rygaard. John, take it away.
Wow, I feel like I should come from behind some sort of drape, you know, like The Price is Right or something. But it's so good to be with everybody. Happy Thanksgiving 1 week early for all of you that are celebrating that in a week, and for everybody else, take the day off next Thursday. I hope you have a good weekend either way. I am so happy to be here, and I'm laughing and I'm fired up, and I mean, I'm keeping myself on mute because I think I would disrupt everybody else speaking today, because I know, and I think all of you know, that what you just heard from these two exceptional human beings, sorry, George, is the best. It's the best of the best. And you won't see it everywhere. One of the wonderful things is that somebody named Axel Schultz and co-founder Marita Schultz, they're not staying on the sidelines and just kind of watching things go by. We've got, well, he called himself, he was described as the global 100 influencers. I'm going to up that. I'm going to vote for global 5, because the combination of what Axel and Marita have produced in their careers, combined with just how they've stayed in it and they've involved themselves and how they continue to involve themselves, it is beyond anything that we can all hope for. He is the shining light of our team as far as what he's done year after year, along with Marita. And, you know, we really honor that. And that spirit he brings in that presentation you heard is what attracts all of us as mentors. That's our role. George and I and Juliet, we're here to be a part of the team. And I heard Axel say that the part about team is so important. He had 3 bullets in one of the last slides that talked about team. But the one thing that he also does, along with Marita, is they always create a mission beyond, you know, what anybody could expect. It's this huge mountain that they have to go called innovation now. That's the new mission. And it's a mountain. It's not something everybody can understand, but he and Marita can get it up, and all of us will go with them, and we'll be the Sherpas if we have to take the packs, and because we know that innovation is needed for both startups, scale-ups as we call it, revenue producing companies, as well as mid-level and into the biggest companies on earth. We've seen, like, Siebel was brought up by Axel. I knew Siebel very well. I used the Siebel product. And it was the giant of customer relationship management. And then, you know, that was 20 years ago, maybe 21. We were using it at the company I was at, and we were a startup, and we were moving fast. Gone now. That company's gone. So I'm saying all these things because I'm observing, like you are, what's so great. And the things that are great are that you have a place to come to get information, where the best of the world are bringing it. If you had to search this and you go and have to wade through all the fake news out there, I'm just using the vernacular of the day, you wouldn't know if you got it or not. But I can tell you, this is real. This stuff that you're seeing today, get the recording, watch it again. What you saw in there for both presentations is pure gold, platinum if you like that better. But it's really good stuff. And the reason it's good is it's current. It isn't just the past where you can learn a lot from the past, but it's the current information. And that's what you get. And what I'm here to do is to talk about the membership, because I would recommend every single one of you that are watching this join at some level. You don't have to join at the $10,000 or $20,000 level. You can join at the $250, $300 level, but join because of what I just said. You're going to get it all, you know, twice a month. We'll talk about that at the very end. You're going to have a chance to get this information in different formats. But one of the things that I really took to heart today was I used to think that startups were the innovators of the world, and that they were the ones that were pulling everybody up that tree that Axel talked about. I love that tree. It just shows how fast things are moving right now. But, you know, they need help too. All of you that are startups or moving into revenue, you need help, because are you sure you have an innovative product or not? Is it something that is going to work in the marketplace? The reason I was laughing so much is because Axel is the nicest man on earth, but he's super pointed and sharp about what works for him to invest. And all of us that are in the network, 900, all of us, we're learning from how he invests so that we know what the best thing to do. He'll say, well, I'm not going to invest in that. That's not good. And the next moment he says, you're the greatest guy in the world. If he's anything, he's real. And he's taught all of us to be realists, but also to be dreamers. Those are the two words he said in succession after each other. Wow. He didn't say realist, but that's the word I use, but he was talking about being real. I don't invest in everything, he was saying. And then that whole chart that said all the different elements about what makes a good company for all of us to invest in, right on. And of course, Juliet said some of the same characteristics there. This is what you get for membership. I'm going to see if I can get my slides up here now that I said everything I was going to say. I'm just kidding. You guys, you'll put up with me. Let's see if I can get this puppy to do what I want it to. No? Yeah. All right. 3 things. Let's talk about them. Here we go. Total focus on innovation in World Innovations Forum. Now, that's only one of the organizations that you heard. Blue Column was another one. We'll get into that down the road in other presentations. Keep coming back to more presentations. But today, I'm going to speak more about WIF, this is where I'm a mentor in that group. And it's all innovation. All in. Both feet, both hands, everything. We're even planting here. I love that. You got to get in. You got to get into it, and you got to stay in it, and you got to be all about it. If I was to go up and look at an investment, I go, is that person innovative? Are they thinking about what's possible in the future? Are they dreaming like was said, or not? And if we don't see that part is as well as the other characteristics in that chart that had those, the different elements, then we're not going to go forward. What do we mean by this? Well, we have innovation acceleration for scale-ups. Another word for people that are making revenue. Small, medium enterprises, corporations, that's all going to be laying out in the new year. Gosh, we're going to have 2 events for the San Francisco chapter happening every single month because we want to bring value. For your membership, we want all of you to succeed. We're going to be real with you too. Get ready. We'll even provide some information about how to do well when you're presenting to us. How do you like that? That's better than those TV shows with all, people singing. And George will not be singing, nor me, so only Juliet in the future, by the way, just kidding you. Monthly knowledge transfer webinars, innovation design school, making ambassadors fit for innovation support. All this is included in innovation, but if you don't jump into it full like we do, you never are really going to get the most of it. And this will accelerate you whether you're small, medium, or large. This is what we talked about today. You got a lot of information about that. Some of you still have information about how can I get more investment. Send that email to George. He'll get it out to all of us. We'll talk with you. We're interested in helping, and we'll go from there. Okay. You heard some of this. The one thing I'll point out, besides the first 2 bullets, is that the forum is reaching out to investors monthly. We're attracting a lot of people, mainly because 4 exits means that they're successful exits that the Schultz family has had. That's very unusual. 1 is amazing, but 2 that are billion-dollar exits, get out of here. I can't even, that's why I said top 5, actually, that's it. I'm putting you in the top 5. Companies need to qualify to be introduced, okay? All these kind of things. We're very particular even about other members that are coming in that are going to invest. They have to impress us. You're going to be a part of a great organization. Now, I was mentioning some of these. Individual members, entrepreneurs, or investors is really only 175. You'll see this on the website, okay? World Innovation Forum, WIForum.org, and you'll see where the member you can join. I would love for you to do it. What can stop you? $300 for a revenue producing company? I charge for my services just that per hour because I do scale ups. I focus that. That's my expertise to make sure that the revenue is kicking into high gear. If you can imagine, it's kind of hard for me to sleep some nights. But I do help companies too to make things happen. Organization members, you can see there's bigger dollars. You can all look at that and you'll decide what's best. But if you join a group, you are now in that club. you're not part of that group. Now this is a little bit different, but there's a TV show called Cheers on TV for a long time, like 20 years. And the song said something like, where everybody knows your name. Well, in this case, we're going to know your name because we're going to be counseling you. We're interested in that. And like I said, the $300 fee there is the same as my hourly fee. So you can get a lot more from all the things, all the forums, be it every event. Don't miss them. And that's it, George. And let's move forward in a fast forward mode. And there's the website again for join. And I'm happy to answer questions if there's anything, but otherwise, thank you. Did I lose you?
No, you did not. No, you did not.
Good. I'm so glad you're all here.
We've just been Zoomed. That's all. That's
who's zooming who?
Yeah, click, 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 and hope it works and everything. So, listen, John, thank you so much. One of the things that I did want to ask you is, as an accredited angel investor, you always have companies coming up to you and pitching ideas and everything. And I wanted to ask you not what is some of the things that drive you crazy, but what are some of the things that entrepreneurs do when they approach you that actually opens the door for them to even get a conversation moving forward with you?
Yeah. Do they have the right leadership, and do they have the right advisors? Okay. If they don't, I know I can't lift it all up, and so I don't want to try. My expertise is revenue production. I'm not an operations guy. I'm not the CFO. No way on that. The bottom line is do they have enough of a team on their own staff, and do they have advisors? And if they told me that they were part of the WIF, I'd say, tell me more. I want to hear everything you have to say. Good. Because I know that they're getting support from Axel and all of his advisors. Mm-hmm. And that's a good example right there, George.
Quick question, probably the last one we got time for today. Do you receive I imagine, do you receive the same benefits no matter which membership are there differences?
Yeah, there's differences. There's things that are included and not included. You'll see those things on the website. It's the best place to look. Okay. And you'll be happy with the level you choose, most likely, because you don't need more or less. But as you grow, you can upgrade.
Okay.
And you can leave a question about that if you want someone on our team to help to decide which would be the best. Okay. Some of the people that are on here that I know, I've seen them on the roster. I think most of you will join for like the 275 range because you're smaller. Yeah. And that's great. What's 275 for a year, right?
Exactly. Well, listen, John, thank you. And again, anybody that has questions and they want to direct them to John directly or through me, please feel free to do so. We will make sure that all your questions are answered. John, thanks again.
And look for our emails, George. We're going to have a lot of events because we're going to keep giving. We give, we know that works. Yep.
All right. Well, listen, John, thank you. Thanks again. Appreciate it. Listen, we want to thank you all for joining us. Our call to action to each of you today is this. We believe in worldwide entrepreneurship and neuroideation innovation being the next disruptive force in innovation. And having you as active members of the World Innovations Forum together helps us change the world and the corporate business scene for the better. And you should know that we can only grow stronger with your ideas and presence if you're beside us. Now, again, I want to thank Axel Schultz. I want to thank Juliet Donahue. I want to thank John Reigard, as well as Alyssa King of the World Innovation Team in Lucerne, Switzerland, for helping with today's presentation. And just by the by, moving through November and December, Blue Calum is going to be offering beta intro webinars on the 24th of November. We're going to be having a big coming out party announcing the Blue Calum Corporation on November 25th. And in December, on December 7th, we are going to be doing another webinar, which is going to be a guide to managing, reporting, and executive oversight of corporate projects. And I would just urge you to attend these webinars by visiting the bluecolumn.com webpage for registration to all the Blue Column events. And then please know, the presentation will be available on the Meetup page, on the bluecolumn.com webpage, the worldinnovationsforum.org website. And I'm George Parrish, and I want to wish you all a blessed and happy holiday season, as well as a safe holiday season. And we wish to extend to you, join us again for another World Innovation online presentation. Have a great day and evening, everyone. Be strong, be safe, keep innovating. Thank you. See you soon.